Okay, hi, my name is Alex Cooper. I am the managing editor of the Avalanche Journal, and I am here today with Tyler Carson from Fernie Alpine Resort, and we are going to talk about work he has been doing with several others on, I guess, revising or updating the Avalanche size scale. So, hi, Tyler. Thanks a lot for joining me.
And no problem, Alex.
Yeah, so I guess my first question is, where did this idea to review the size scale originate, and what's been the process so far?
Well, I think originally it started kind of with Bruce, Montse, Bacard, I can't pronounce her name, I'm sorry. Ethan Green and Ian Tom's work back in 2020, where they were giving a more visual method of estimating avalanche size. And then from there, it kind of went to a presentation that Bruce gave at the Elk Valley Snow Avalanche Workshop Society, where we talked about how um, whether different hubs, different observers give different sizes to avalanches. And then moved on to our presentation at the spring meetings where we discussed whether we should include escape skill and other such things into the size scale to allow for better estimation. And then onto the ISSW where we presented a paper where we kind of talked about how there are kind of two different things that really affect how people make estimations of avalanche size and how they can be inconsistent.
So what do you see as the issues with the current scale?
I think the current scale, as it stands, doesn't provide enough tools for practitioners to provide good estimations of avalanche size. So we're getting a discrepancy in size due to a lack of tools and a lack of clarity of language is really what it is. The sizes, currently we do have a few issues with the actual volumes and measures of sizes, but really what we're really trying to tackle here is how we communicate them and how we give people the tools to communicate them.
Okay. So you mentioned people, mention or talking about size in different ways. So what are some ways that people might overestimate or underestimate avalanche size?
So we're often affected in our estimation of avalanche size through emotional response. You know, if I've been caught in an avalanche or exposed to an avalanche, I may overestimate its effect just because of my personal fears, those sorts of things, my stressors, those sorts of things. We also tend to over or underestimate due to our work places and the sort of the frameworks that we work within at where we work. So we can over and underestimate that way. And then we can also over and estimate, I guess, when we're, on foot and we get caught in an avalanche, we tend to overestimate. But then when scale is changed and we're like in a helicopter or at a distance, we often tend to underestimate. So trying to give people some tools to help with that, I think, is what would make the difference.
And why is it important to get the size right? Like, why is that so important to communicate properly?
It's important to communicate properly and accurately because it's a tool. When we talk about size of avalanche within the conceptual model of avalanche hazard, we need to understand what is out there. We can't apply risk treatment appropriately if we don't understand what the actual size that we're facing is. And that's kind of sort of one of the biggest ones, I think, for me. I have a very diverse group of coworkers, and some of the newer workers and some of the more experienced workers have their own biases to avalanche size. And I currently, because I personally know them, I can kind of adjust for their bias. But if I was being communicated to by somebody else that I didn't know, maybe another team somewhere else, or if I'm reading the InfoX, for example, I don't know that team or that group's bias.
Yeah. Interesting. So I want to get into you presented a couple of drafts of your proposed scale at the spring conference. There was one there, and then I know you mentioned like there was more feedback received after that, and then you presented it again at ISSW. So talk a bit about some of the elements of the draft you've proposed. I was interested in some of the new descriptors you had for some of the sizes. Looking at size 1 avalanches. You mentioned it says relatively harmless to a person on foot, unlikely to bury a person except in run-out zones with unfavorable terrain features. So can you just tell me like how you came up with that descriptor?
So that descriptor came from some discussions we had. The on foot we added because we wanted to help people to visualize someone at their highest vulnerability. When you're on skis or on your snowmobile, you are more vulnerable than you are when you're in a snowcat, for example, but you are less vulnerable than you are when you're on foot. It's sort of as a human being on foot in avalanche terrain is kind of your highest level of vulnerability. The other descriptors that came along with the unfavorable terrain came from the European Avalanche Warning Service and from their descriptor. And we've since sort of readjusted and retweaked that. We found it was a bit wordy, and we've taken big chunks of that out and left some of the parts that we felt were important to the structure of that in.
Okay. And so what wording did you use instead?
We've gone for draft 2. We've gone to relatively harmless to a person on foot, except in terrain traps. Just cleared out a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay, so terrain traps being the main thing, which is something I feel they teach in AST courses. Like size 1 isn't harmless unless you get swept into a gully or over a cliff or something like that.
Yeah. Our discussions on this really have come from the fact that it's really hard for people to grasp relatively. Relatively is a funny word for people. When we say relatively harmless, people automatically think harmless, and it's not harmless. It's just less harmful than a size D2 avalanche, which is something we have a hard time grasping.
Yeah, I was also interested in, for size 1, you mentioned a person on foot. Same with a size 2 avalanche, you specify it could bury or kill a person on foot, which that on foot, addition is not part of the scale now. So, and I wonder that, compared to skis and people on snowmobiles or on skis, where does the part about being on foot differ, and why add that in?
Just the poor mobility. On skis we can move fast, even with your skins on. You can still, or even sidestepping, you can move faster than post holing. You tend to be, if you're on skis or a snowmobile or even snowshoes, you tend to be sort of active in the terrain and know what's going on. Whereas if you're an industrial worker who runs a plow truck, you may not know, how to dodge or avoid or move so that you can reduce your exposure or reduce your exposure to the avalanches. So being on foot, I think we're just really trying to get across that it is at their highest level of vulnerability.
Yeah. And then jumping ahead, for size 3 and 4, I see the draft that you have, the descriptors are largely the same, but for size 5, you propose removing the phrase largest snow avalanche known. So why take that out?
The largest size snow avalanche known tends to bias people. They don't want to use it because, you see a big avalanche and you're like, oh, is this the largest snow avalanche known? Or the largest one I've ever seen even. It may or may not be. But what it is a size 5 avalanche fits within a descriptor of size, of impact pressure, mass, volume, those sorts of things. And we want to make sure that people are making that decision that this is a size 5 avalanche by those, even if, and being able to estimate that and not going, well, this isn't a size 5 avalanche. Mark Griss and crew there, they gave a great presentation talking about it and how it, it's hard to say. Johan Slam has lots of opinions on this, and I've had some good conversations with him where he's just like, yeah, it's a size 5, and I think we just need to be able to more readily put that measure on an avalanche.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because I suspect the largest avalanches people experience in the mountains of Western Canada are not close to the scale of the largest avalanches known, which are massive, glacial rock, snow and ice and rock events. Yeah.
Well, that was, you were at the ISSW with me, and you saw the presentation from Langtang, and it's just like, the snow didn't melt from that village for 4 years, I think is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
So that how deep and thick that avalanche was. So
yeah, for sure. And then you're adding volume and volume descriptors to this. So I was interested, coming up with adding volume, which isn't, I think mass was only in the scale, is only in the scale currently. So adding volume, and then also, coming up with these descriptors such as will fill the floor of a large house 2 meters deep, and how you, came up with those descriptors.
That's all Bruce, Monse, Ian, and Ethan. That's all their work. So we really just took that information and placed it in there. And then, we have tried to tweak it a bit. There has been some concern about equity and about how people don't understand what a hockey rink looks like or what an apartment looks. There's a mismatch there, and these are just ideas, really, and we're trying to find the best possible. We've discussed how maybe adding to a glossary where it says 2 tennis courts is a hockey rink or something, like some sort of equivalency scale, so we can paint the best picture for all the people. So, and the volume descriptors is a good one because it's an easy one to visualize, right? It's hard to visualize mass. You've had a rain on snow event and you've had a dry snow avalanche. The piles will often be the same. The masses will be different, and so estimating the mass might be tough. Giving someone another option to look at it. It doesn't have to be perfect. There may be, it may not be a perfect measure, but giving people a tool to look at the avalanche and go, okay, the volume here should be, a size 2, or it should be a size 3. Just giving people more tools so that we can hopefully be more accurate.
Yeah, for sure, and more accurate in guessing size. And then, I didn't mention this in, when I proposed some questions to you, but I guess one thing about the size scale is that it's used both by, professionals to communicate with each other, but it's also a public communication tool. So is that a challenge, figuring out how to make this both work for professionals and recreationists?
I think that it is a challenge. It's sort of front of mind for all of us, for myself, for Lisa, for Brendan, for Bruce, on this, because it is a scale that is shared between recreationalists and workers, we'll call them. And the difference between an experienced recreationalist and a novice worker, a new or young worker, it's a very gray zone. It needs to be available and usable by someone who is brand new, period, and someone who has tons of experience, period, whether they're a professional or a worker, or not, maybe we won't use professional, but like a worker or a recreationalist.
Okay. So you've presented this now a few times and done several revisions. You just presented it at ISSW, to the whole world in October. And where do you go from here in terms of?
So we are kind of in the refinement stage of sort of where we're going with our size scale. The timing seems to be good. The Ogres is due for a revision here. So we're going to take and submit it to the TechCom and then allow them to review. We've decided that we're going to leave the actual physical dimension measure of avalanches, whether it's mass, volume, those sorts of things, to those guys. They can kind of research it and deal with that. We're worried more about making sure that our estimation wording alignment is as close as possible. So I had a talk with Scott Martin. We're going to try and move this forward in the next couple of weeks to him and pass it on to them, and then be there if they have questions for us, and hopefully it makes a difference. And yeah, if not, we've made an attempt.
All right. Well, thanks, Tyler. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, if anyone has any more feedback, unfortunately, I think presentation choice, and maybe should have done a poster presentation at the ISSW. There was more opportunity for feedback. The feedback was like not quite what I'd hoped for. So if anyone has any feedback, feel free to email me, tcarson@skifernie.com. Reach out to Bruce, Lisa, or Brendan, and any one of us, and just, we'll take any and all feedback. You get some real rogue stuff out there, but sometimes it makes lots of sense, and sometimes it's something you had never even thought of.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for your time. And it's November or end of October. So yeah, I hope you have a great winter in Fernie.
Thanks, Alex. Awesome. You too.
All right. Take care. Bye.